Hi everyone, welcome back to Destined to Relax. My name's Alicia and I'm here to talk about everything cruising. Thank you for those who have returned and welcome to those who are brand new. So when I talk about cruising solo, especially on Carnival Cruise Lines, I get a very similar question from a lot of people, and that's, isn't cruising expensive? And I'm here to tell you the absolute truth. Yes, it can be, but it absolutely doesn't have to be. Cruising has this reputation of either being a luxury vacation or it's something that only retirees do because they have an unlimited budget. And neither of those are true. So today I'm going to break down the real cost of part-time solo cruising. That is not like a highlight reel or the TikTok math. It's the actual cost when you sit down and you actually add everything up. So I'm going to show you what you're going to pay before you ever step foot on a ship, the costs that people tend to forget to tell you about, and then how to lower your total without ruining the experience. So if you've ever thought that I want to take a cruise, possibly go solo, but I don't want to go broke, this video's for you. So let's get into it. So we'll start with the cost breakdown of the more, we'll say, obvious things. So we have the base fare. The base fare is the number that Carnival will advertise is the price of the cruise per person. So for solo cruisers, this is where things get a little bit tricky because most of the prices that are listed are based on double occupancy. So for instance, on Carnival, you might see like a 3 to 5 night cruise could be advertised for $179 or $249 or $329, whatever the case may be. But if you're going to go solo, you're often going to pay close to double that amount. So for reality, if you're going to go solo, a 3 to 4 night cruise, you're probably looking $350 to $650. 5 to 7 nights will be somewhere from $600 to $1,100. Of course, this all depends on where you're at, what time of the season, and whether or not you have any specials like casino offers, things like that. So this is just like your base price first time ever cruising. So with what is also included in that base fare is your taxes and port fees. Now, I can't say that that's how all the cruise lines are doing it. I think it is now. There were some laws that were changed recently, but most cruise lines are including the taxes and port fees in with their base fare. Taxes and port fees are non-negotiable. You can't get those reduced or eliminated, but they all have to do with the ports that you're visiting, the length of the cruise, and government fees. Typically, they're about $120 to $220 per person, again, depending on where you're going. But those are things you have to pay regardless. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Next, you have gratuities. So Carnival currently charges daily gratuities. And you have two options. You can either prepay, meaning you'll pay it before you ever set foot on the ship, or you can have it added to your onboard account. I personally like to prepay just so I don't have to think about them and, it's paid and forgotten. But usually they're between $16 and $18 per day per person. It all depends on the type of room that you have. So the $16 mark is going to be if you have an interior, an ocean view, or a balcony room. If you decide to go fancy and go to a suite, you're going to pay $18 a day. Hotels. So I have heard a lot of people say, oh, well, I only live 3 hours away by plane. I don't have to do any layovers, so I'm just going to fly in the morning of. That is an option, but it's definitely not one I would recommend. I always recommend flying in the day before at least because things happen. hotels, I'll use the example near Miami. The Miami cruise port hotels in that area on average is about like 120 to 250, depending on the time of year and what brand of hotel you're looking at. I typically like to budget like 150 to 180, just so that way it's a mid-range, it's a clean hotel, and usually there's a shuttle or at least it has easy Uber access. Skipping that pre-cruise hotel is super risky. I have had it multiple times where we've had delays or cancellations where if I hadn't flown in a day before, I would have missed the ship. And missing that ship is way more expensive than one night in a hotel. So it's just food for thought. Take it as you wish. Flights. Of course, flights vary widely depending on where you live and where you're heading to. For myself, I live in southeastern Washington State, so the closest major airport is about 2 hours away. I'm about 4 hours away from Seattle. So that kind of gives you an idea that we do have a small little regional airport that's probably about 15-20 minutes away from where I live. So flights will either involve a bit of a drive to get to a bigger airport, or I'm going to pay a little bit more going out of a regional airport. So flight prices, of course, are going to vary depending on where you're at. I've seen them as little as $150 on up to $700 or $800. And of course, it's going to be more during those peak seasons, which is going to be like the school breaks and major holidays. Now, if you're going to be driving, of course, you also have to plan for that too. There are costs associated with it. You're going to have gas and there is parking. So, for instance, if I was to drive over to Seattle and cruise out of Seattle, I'm probably going to have about $50 in gas, but then I'm also going to have parking expenses. Most ports, they charge somewhere between $15 and $25 per day if you're going to be parking at the pier. So if you're going to be doing a 7-day cruise, you could be talking on up to $175 in parking. So about $225 for gas and parking to be able to drive to a port. Just as a rough estimate. So again, it's something to add into the budget. It's something to consider. It's just really unfortunate if you end up not including that and then you end up having to cut prices, cut your experiences somewhere else down the line because you didn't budget for it. Food, of course, isn't going to be included on board the ship, but when you're traveling, you don't get to use the cruise fare as your way to pay for food. So you've got food at the airport. You might have dinner the night before or breakfast the morning of your cruise. Typically, I would budget about $75 for off-ship food. Of course, you can do that cheaper. You can do it more expensive. It just depends on what your palate is fancying at the moment. But that's just a reasonable midline amount to anticipate. And of course, it depends if you're going to be traveling by yourself or if you're going to be going with friend or family. Excursions. Excursions are completely optional, but most people want to be able to do something when they are in port each day. So there are two different options. You can either go through the cruise line, where the excursions could cost anywhere from $50 to $200 per excursion per port. Or you can do them independently. So might be as inexpensive as $30, could go on up to about $100. It just varies on what you're planning on doing. Now, here's a little caveat that I really want to make clear. If you choose to go independently, be very, very cautious that you are able to make it back to the ship by their cutoff time. Preferably even a half hour, an hour prior. I try to be back on ship about an hour before they tell me to, just because things happen. And I say that because if you're going to go independent and you have a taxi that breaks down, or you just lose track of the time, they will leave you. And unfortunately, I've seen it happen. If you're going to choose to do an excursion through the cruise line, you are guaranteed they will not leave you. So if a taxi or a bus or whatever that's transporting you to and from the excursion, if it breaks down, they will wait for you to get back. So you're going to pay a little bit more if you're going through the cruise. However, it's kind of like an insurance policy that you're not going to get left behind. All right. Next, while you're on the ship, you have the potential, if you so choose, to purchase Wi-Fi. And a lot of people don't understand, so I want to explain really briefly. You've got your cell phone. And obviously, when you're on land, you make phone calls, you're on the internet, whatever, like normal. When you're on a cruise, you need to have it on airplane mode. And that's because otherwise your phone is constantly going to be looking for signal while you're in the middle of the water. And that gets really, really expensive. And I would hate to see anyone end up with an outrageously expensive cell phone bill because they didn't put their phone on airplane mode. Now, you are able to get Wi-Fi plans through the cruise line. And depending on what your needs are, it could be anywhere from about $17 to $25 per day. Depending on if you're just wanting it for social media, being able to post pictures, stay in touch with friends and family through social media. Do you need email? Do you need your streaming services? It all depends on which form of Wi-Fi that you need. I typically get Wi-Fi because I've got kids at home. I have my mom that's getting up there in age. I like to be able to stay in touch with her. I'm leaving my dog at home. And plus I work part-time. So I want to make sure that I have access to Wi-Fi. Now we got the drinks, and a lot of people have heard about the alcohol packages, which Carnival calls Cheers, very appropriately named. Now, Cheers is not just alcohol, and that's where I think a lot of people get kind of caught up. Cheers is literally every drink that is available on the cruise ship that is under, I believe it's $20. So like if you were going to pay just out of pocket for a drink, if it was under $20, it'll be included in the Cheers package. So we've got, of course, the alcohol. You've got bottled water, sodas, smoothies, specialty coffees, energy drinks. Let's see, there's like electrolyte drinks. I've seen some protein drinks. So there's a lot of options. Now, if you don't want to pay for drinks, that's okay. There are things that are available that are complimentary with your base fare. And that's going to be water that is, it's kind of like tap water. You have lemonade, you have iced tea, and you have black coffee that's available on in the buffet on the pool deck or the Lido deck. Those are all complimentary. And then like with breakfast, there's usually like apple juice, orange juice. And I want to say there's like a passion fruit or something like that. Again, every cruise line is going to vary on what is complimentary, what isn't, but that's what I have experienced with Carnival. So the Cheers package with the gratuity, because they do charge an automatic 20% gratuity to all the bartenders because they work extra hard for you. I figure it's going to be about $85 a day. And it's either the entire cruise or not at all. You don't get to choose which days you get it. And I know a lot of people are bummed that that's a thing, but you can also buy each drink individually. So it's completely up to you what you feel is most appropriate. I do not get it for every cruise. If I think that I'm going to be drinking a little more heavily, I'll definitely factor it in. If not, I'm going to skip it. The Cheers package, if you're just strictly looking at alcohol, if you drink about 5 to 6 drinks, you have paid for the package per day. So just so you kind of get an idea as to what it takes to make your money's worth. And as far as all the drinks are unlimited except for alcohol, you get up to 15 drinks per day. So it's from 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. But you can get up to 15, and that's when they cut you off. That 15 max is whether or not you have the Cheers package. So just so everyone's aware. Okay, on to other financial things that I really feel is important. I have a non-negotiable to make sure that I have some extra funds in case of any emergencies or any medical needs. So that could be, all of a sudden we hit some rough waters and I need motion sickness medication. I usually bring it with me, but say I forgot it. I want to make sure that I've got some funds set aside for that. If I need to go into the med center for some reason, which I believe to start, it's about $150 to go to the med center. Maybe you need to replace something you forgot. I went on a cruise a few years ago, and my daughter forgot her toothbrush. So having that buffer can really be beneficial. So if I don't use it, that's great. If I do need to use it or use any part of it, I'm just glad it's there. Travel insurance. Travel insurance is one of those that a lot of people don't feel they need it until they realize they need it, and then it's too late. It can be anywhere from $40 to $80. So it's not an outrageous cost, but that will help if you have delays on flights, if you have an unexpected medical situation before you leave for your cruise. A lot of times they will even help cover any medical expenses if you need to go to the med center. So it's definitely beneficial and can definitely make your money's worth if you end up needing to utilize it. So those are all a lot of things that are a little more predictable. But now we'll talk about some of the hidden costs that people tend to forget about. And but I want to make sure that you guys are remembering it. So this is where budgets can quietly explode if you're not careful. So you have Uber or Lyft. That's getting from your airport to the hotel, your hotel to the port, and then when you return, going from the port back to the airport. Of course, depending on which port you're at, which hotel you're at, whether there's any shuttle services available, figure it could be $40 to $80, maybe even more. If you're in a place like Galveston, Texas, but you flew into Houston, chances are your Uber is probably going to be about $80 each way. Last minute toiletries. This is one that I try to remember ahead of time, and I'll purchase at home just so I'm not paying outrageous amounts being in a touristy area. But it's things like travel size items, sunscreen, aloe vera. The further south that you go, the closer to the equator, the more likely you're going to get burnt. So having aloe on hand is a really, really, really smart idea. Snacks. Of course, you've got snacks at the airport. That's kind of a given. I usually like to have some kind of crackers or popcorn or something like that. Although there's outrageous amounts of food on the ship, things do shut down for a few hours. And for myself, especially if there's a day of drinking involved, I don't really think about eating until like 3 in the morning, and that's when everything's shut down. So having a little something to be able to nibble on is not a bad thing to think about. Laundry. Now, laundry, of course, is very cruise specific because some people, if you're just going to be on like say a 5 to 7 day, you don't need to do laundry. It's okay. You can bring home dirty clothes if you feel so inclined. But you might decide that, no, I want to go back with clean clothes. I don't want to do a bunch of laundry when I get home. And that's okay. A lot of the ships do have laundry facilities on board, either for the staff to do it for you, which is going to be more pricey. A lot of ships do also have self-serve. So if you choose to do that, figure probably $10 to $25 if you're doing self-serve. If it's where the cruise ship is going to be doing it for you, I would say probably 25 to 50. Cruise clothing. I know for me, this is where I mess up on my budget almost every time because I want to get the new outfit. I want to replace a swimsuit. I want to get new shoes that match my new outfit. So there's always things. And I'm doing a lot better about that because I'm trying to become more minimalistic and recognizing what are my cruise clothes and what are my everyday clothes. But just think, even just that one thing could easily be $50 to $100, maybe even more. So be really cautious. Definitely look ahead though to see are there any special theme nights that the cruise line does. For Carnival, there's going to be an 80s night. There's going to be a white night. There could be a Motown, which is, more 70s. And you may want to dress up for it. It is not required. A lot of people enjoy it. So take that as you see appropriate. Luggage. Luggage is another one that I don't really think about until I get to the airport. So, of course, you've got checked bag fees. A lot of people who take cruises, they bring a big suitcase, so it has to get checked. Maybe you want to get a new suitcase. Those, of course, cost money. Another thing that I would definitely recommend, and I just got this for my last cruise, and I'm really glad that I did, is a luggage scale so I could weigh my suitcase ahead of time before I get to the airport because I don't want to get hit with astronomical fees for being over the 50-pound limit. I think I got the scale for maybe $10 on Amazon and it works like a charm. So, these items, it may not be every trip, but when it happens, it gets expensive. So definitely make sure that you budget accordingly. So here are some hacks to lower your total cost. Make sure you're booking off season or what they call a shoulder season. So late August, early December, before all of the chaos from the holidays. And then January to early February, where you're just missing holidays. Those are the cheapest rates that I have seen. So I would definitely look at those if that would work appropriately for what your travel needs and availability are. Use price drop alerts. Carnival does have price protection depending on the type of pricing that you get locked into, and track your fares on occasion. So I've had it where I saw that there was a big drop in cruise fare shortly after I booked. I hadn't made my final payment yet, which is usually due 90 days before sailing. And I was able to save over $200. So it was a big win for me to just get on real quick and take a look at pricing. Okay. So, let's see. Make sure that you're not overspending pre-cruise. So you don't need new outfits for every single night. You don't need the luxury hotels. And you don't need to do every single add-on that Carnival has to offer. Some of them are a lot of fun. Some of them sound very convenient, but it's not necessary. So that intentional spending is the absolute key. So here's a real average for a solo cruise budget for a 5-night Carnival cruise. So for the base fare and the taxes and port fees, probably about $850. Hotel, we'll say $170. Transportation, we'll say $220. Food off the ship, we'll say $60. Excursions, $150. Wi-Fi at $100. And then insurance and buffer for medical, $150. So that's $1,700. If I cruise 2 to 3 times per year, then that would be saving about $150 per month. So no debt, no stress, it's fully planned. So, is cruising solo expensive? Only if you're not planning for it. Cruising solo is affordable, it's flexible, and it's honestly empowering. But you have to be intentional with your money. So if this video helped you understand the real cost, or if you want more honest cruise breakdowns like solo cabins, Carnival versus Royal Caribbean, or budget itineraries, let me know in the comments. I would be happy to help you. Cruising solo is affordable. You just have to plan for it intentionally. Thanks y'all for watching, and we'll see you next week. Have a great day, everyone.